Fitzy and Whipper.
It is Fitzy and Webb with you on Nova for your Thursday morning. We like to talk about local content on this show, but I think we need to talk about this because, you know, everyone in Sydney is involved. If you actually pick up the Daily Telegraph, you would read about the gangland wars that's going on in Sydney at the moment, and we would like to learn a little bit more. Two men that dedicate their lives to this, crime reporters for the Daily Telegraph. Josh Hanrahan and Moz Morri join us now. Boys, thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Yeah, not a problem.
Guys, where do we start with this? I mean, if we spell out that there's been 13 murders in the past 18 months, can you go back to the start of this?
Well, the very start of this series of murders began with the hit of a guy called Faris Aben Nader. Yeah. Now, he was a Comanchero who had done time in jail for being involved in an airport brawl. And he was kind of almost clearing his life up, but he was being approached to patch over from the Comanchero to go to another club.
Yep.
Right.
That's not a very good idea.
No, they don't like that.
They want you to stay in their cubby house.
Yes.
Their clubhouse.
Yep.
Right.
That's like when I was thinking about going to Triple M and Whipper said he was going to put a hit out on my head.
I was going to take your knees out to start with, but they're already broken.
So that started the bloodshed. And there hadn't been any sort of big hits for about 2 years until he was taken out. And ironically, it was a former head of the Comanchero that was killed, Mick Howie. And from there, things got a bit messy, didn't they? There was then there was another murder of a guy called Medjed Hamzy, and that really kicked things off. And that's what started a tit for tat with the Alameddines.
Okay, so that's the Hamzy name that we know of, and it's the Alameddines, Josh, against the Hamzys. So who started the war? Was it the Alameddines or the Hamzys?
Well, this is kind of one of the big issues was that both sides wanted each other. So there's a bloke called Mark Buddle, who's a Maroubra boy, and he's the head of the Comanchero bikie gang around the world.
So he's
around
not
the world.
Yeah,
Where's he now?
International commander.
Well,
That's a very good question.
He was in Dubai, wasn't he? He's over there hiding out.
He was.
How come we can't find him? You would think that's pretty easy, isn't it, if he's checking into hotels and stuff?
Well, he's now gone to Turkey/Cyprus, and there's a part of Cyprus in particular that's a bit of a disputed part of the world.
Right. They tend to go to areas where it's very hard for extradition.
Yes.
And that's... So there's most of the bikie gang leaders now who are worried about being picked up. They're all living... They're not coming back.
No.
But they're running their business because of these encrypted devices, stealth and ciphers.
Yeah.
So, Josh, why did the two families start the hatred for each other?
Drugs.
Right. So they were both families involved in the drug trade.
Yeah, and there is... I mean, you can imagine how many tens and hundreds of millions of dollars are in the drug market in Sydney. And so these two families were running drugs throughout the whole of the city.
Yeah.
And essentially they were trying to take each other's territory.
Right.
And so that doesn't go down too well in that world, and the way that they deal with it is, you know, in a pretty violent manner.
We had John Sylvester on. He was talking about the Frankston murders and stuff like that. Now, when you talk about the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, no CCTV footage. So the evidence was really, really hard to get. These days, you think to yourself that we're pretty safe because there's all of that stuff around. But these guys are so brazen, Moz. They don't care.
They don't care. And that's the big difference is what I say is the way they do them so publicly.
Yes.
You know, back in the 80s, there'd be little stories like last seen drinking at a certain hotel.
Yep.
You just wouldn't find him, or they'd find him in sand dunes 15 years later.
Yeah.
But these guys are spraying bullets everywhere. Even though there's CCTV footage, they have got it down very, very pat. Yeah. They have the balaclavas, they have the cars that they burn, they've been steal. Some of those cars are stored for months.
Right.
And then they clone number plates so that on their way to their little job, they don't get picked up as a stolen car. It's got exactly the same number plate as a similar car.
Wow.
So they're very,
Yes.
there's a little template. I'm sure they have a little book somewhere they have to tick off,
Yes.
And you've always know when a hit takes place, I mean, because you're across it, you'd know why that person had been killed and who did it, yeah?
Yeah, we've kind of got to the uncomfortable position in the last couple of months where we've not predicted, but there's been talk about people who are big targets, and we've written stories, and then
we wrote two stories saying there were bounties on these people's heads, and both have been shot. One surviving, Tarek Zahir.
Oh, yeah, in the gym.
Yeah.
And they knew that it wasn't like we were
breaking the news to
Because they'd been warned by the police, hadn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And probably the underworld. And these guys live with
Imagine living like that.
Yeah. So
Because what was the latest? How much is on a person's head? The latest one was like $1 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that really just goes to show you how much money is in the drug game in Sydney, that they have $1 million to throw around to wipe out their competitors because to them it'd be profitable in the end.
Yeah, sure.
and it costs a lot to do one of these. To be, those stolen cars, and they burn 2 or 3. So then they have to pay money to the guys that supply the stolen cars. Then you have the weapons. Then you have the drivers. So there's a lot of overhead.
A lot of that very expensive business to run. If you're thinking about it, go to uni first. But you know what? Is the hit always coming from within the family or the bikie group, or are there external hitmen that are still out there that just specialise in hit jobs?
Yeah, so there's a couple of cases currently before the courts, but they don't always go internally. Sometimes they will. And one of the big issues we've seen is that it's been pretty one-sided, this feud to this point, as I'm sure you'd know. The Hamsies have lost 3 key members, Mejid, Bilal and Gassan Amoon.
And a number of associates.
Yeah.
So, right.
And so there's also a couple of the Hamsies are in jail at the minute, facing charges of another attempted hit, so they've had to do that themselves.
And while it starts off very much about drug and turf, then ego becomes part of it very much. And these guys think very differently. They'll some of these murders are perhaps a little bit personal, with a very side benefit of taking out a competitor.
Of course.
So there's
then they get that patch. But there seems to be a lot of snitches going on as well at the moment as well with some of the last assassinations. I feel like that there's a couple of blokes that have dobbed people in and told them where they're going to be. Is there a bit of that going on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't really know, but police, as we said before, have gone to a number of these blokes and said, you are in danger.
Yep.
Change your pattern, change what you're doing, and a couple of them haven't listened. I mean, Brownie Ahmed was... who was shot dead in May, was still driving around in his same car, whereas these guys will regularly change cars every few months.
Right.
And that kind of thing.
And they'll pay big money for information. They also have become so sophisticated that, they will put trackers on cars and they have ways of finding out, that's one of them they believe. At least they had a tracker, found out, and the guy thought he'd gone to a safe house, then they waited and then followed and
bang. Moz, what about you guys? I mean, you sit here today, but what do you get in terms of threats to yourselves?
Well, we spoke to Johnny Sylvester the other day, and we were just having a bit of a laugh about Chopper back in the day because he used to send him Christmas cards.
I heard about that's very nice.
I know, but you know what? To some of these, the glamour of being famous, and there is one of them at the moment on TikTok who's become quite famous, isn't there? Who was mixed up with a bikie gang, and he's now
on there all the time. He goes live on TikTok.
Yeah,
he's in this little mini series that you're doing and talks in this.
Yeah, that's a bloke called Mudi Tajua. Yep. He used to be pretty high up in the Nomads bikie gang. He's out of the game now, and in our series he kind of talks to us about. I mean, he got into the bikie life when he was 14 or 15. Yeah. He's a relative of the Ibrahim family, and that's kind of how he ended up there. And he talks about the fact that he's now got a kid, and he can't believe how dangerous the streets are, and if his son ever got involved in something like what we've been seeing unfolding on the street for the past 18 months, he'd
be shattered.
Yeah.
So no threats to you guys?
Well, there has been in this current war. We have been contacted by police and said, look, there's a bit of chatter. They're not very happy about us, and they said it's not to the point where there's contracts on us.
Yeah.
That has happened in the past where there was talk a contract was going to be put on me after. Luckily, the guy's dead now, but yeah. So
you got in first, did you, Moz?
Moz!
Yeah, me and my connections got him taken out in Turkey.
Moz, how long you been doing it now for?
40 years.
40 years. So when you get a young fella, Josh, how old are you?
29.
29.
I call him perspiration. I'm inspiration.
So you take him under your wing, but this is a pretty full on job. I mean, Josh, when you don't know what you're getting into at the start. It's full on.
No, it's pretty funny. Mum calls up a lot and says, "How's your day?" and you kind of move on to the next topic. Pretty often.
What happened today, darling?
Yeah, I'm married to a piano teacher, and she's saying, "Oh, I taught this little girl Vera Jacques. How are you going?" Oh, I said, "Come on, guys, you don't. Let's just leave it. How's the little kid going?"
Yeah.
Is this, Moz, in the 40 years, though, is this sort of the most full-on you've ever seen for a city to go through?
It is. It's the worst. The frequency, but it's more the public nature of this. They're shooting them in gyms. They shot up a gym, missed the guy, and the bullets went through into a childcare centre. And the vision, that police released, which was amazing, they even did it. There is bullets missing these kids by centimetres.
You're kidding me.
The worst I've ever seen in 40 years. That's terrifying. And to shoot a guy outside Bridge Street, coming out of a fancy restaurant on Thursday night, and then do a U-turn, come back and put a couple more in to make sure he was gone.
Oh, my God.
That public nature is something that we haven't really seen. There was another war called the Razaks and the Darwiches, and they were pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they did one or two public shootings. Wow. But the more frightening thing about those guys is they purchased a rocket launcher. Yeah. They were going to use a rocket launcher, which would have taken about 6 houses out.
Oh, my gosh.
Jeez. So, we've had our fair, as I said, been watching them since the 80s, but this one's really bad, with that public nature.
Big
and the
numbers.
spraying and the spraying of bullets and the weapons now, apart from a rocket launcher. But, the old days, guns didn't you didn't have like machine pistols, which these guys are kind of using, where they're spraying multiple bullets all over the place and public, in gyms and public streets.
Yeah, back in the underbelly days, you'd knock them down with a sawn-off, wouldn't you, Moz, and then you'd finish them off with a pistol.
Yeah, that's right.
Fairly
Back of the head. And, they were quite compliant. They'd kneel down. You've seen that in the movies. They kneel down and back of the head.
Jesus.
Oh, yeah, I know you've got to do that. No, it has changed a little.
Did you like Mr. In Between, the Foxtel show?
Well,
Someone actually thought I was here the other day.
Scotty Ryan, you look like him.
We have a TikTok thing that we do once a week, and
I love that.
Goes all right. Oh,
mate, I follow that. I'm into it.
Thanks,
Crim City.
Love what you guys do.
Yeah, it hasn't made anywhere near the money Underbelly did.
No.
I
was talking to Andrew Rule yesterday about it, and I said, Jesus, they did very well, but I don't think they licensed it properly. So we've got to get onto that.
Yeah.
If Josh starts to dance in a bikini,
he's the eye candy.
Yeah.
You should see some of the. He gets all these Instagram followers.
Yeah, I bet.
We've set one up for Moz now. We've set one up for Moz.
You need the next generation, Moz. You need to move on.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so episode 2 is dropping today of the Daily Telegraph's Gangland investigation. It's the miniseries The War. It's out today. You can find out more at dailytelegraph.com.au/The War. But Josh and Moz, thank you very much for coming in, and we might even get you back on.
Let's keep up to speed here.
Just before we go, can you see this ending anytime soon?
No, there's probably been 3 really big murders in the past 18 months, and every time one's happened, we've gone, wow, where do we go to from here?
How many are
about
left?
6 contracts currently out there now, at least.
So there's at least 6 more people that have got to go first.
Yeah. So we'll be back probably with something fresh.
Oh my God, it feels so flippant to talk about. But
it is, and it's terrible. And you do get a bit blasé and black humour, but it isn't going to stop.
No,
and
it's not over.
Even if they stop this one, there's a whole group of guys coming from another gang that got locked up about 10, 12 years ago.
Who are they?
It's the Brothers for Life guys.
Right.
Now, and they're kind of connected to the Hamsies. And
You can't let them out, can you?
Well,
so they would come out and support the Hamsies.
Yeah, and there's 1 or 2 of them coming out. They've been locked up since 12-13, which was another very bloody war, the Brothers for Life, the 2 chapters.
Right.
So it'll just be, they'll come out and they'll start, they're going to be starting wanting to have revenge.
Oh my God, it scares me.
All right, Josh Hanrahan and Mark Morri, thank you very much for coming in, boys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, team.
Fitzy and Whipper.